Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Gotham Chess Slow Run. In this series, I started on an authorized account on chess.com at 400, and I've climbed the rating ladder, explaining every step of the process, opening, middle game, end game. And in this episode, we will climb to 1450 and approach 1500. So far, we are undefeated, smooth sailing. And if you do watch this channel every day, you know that I'm recording this in June 2026, at the time of Norway Chess. The reason I haven't uploaded a recap video is because I'm exhausted. I just took a shower. I was at a charity paddle tournament today. I've been doing some podcasts this week, which you should see come out. And yeah, I mean, very exciting, but I'm tired, all right? And I wanted to let you all have a slow run episode so I can chill a little bit, you know, just play chess, do something I like, be very, very relaxed, very chill with it. And you will all learn something. And I feel like you all enjoy the slow runs very much, and I enjoy making them. So on that note, friendly reminder, as always, these episodes are brought to you by my next book, which comes out October the 6th. A bunch of you have ordered all the signed copies. I have asked for there to be some more potentially. D4 on the board. I'm going to go for a Grunfeld defense with G6 and D5. So D4, Knight F6, C4. I have a course on the Grunfeld. It's on Chessly. If you want to try it for free, you can. It's not a scam. There is no card required. So Knight F6, G6, these three moves. And now with Bishop G7, White would be able to play E4. This is the first time I'm playing the Grunfeld defense in this slow run. And basically the Grunfeld strikes at the center after defending it with the knight. And this is a very solid way to play against the Grunfeld. The other way would have been to take and then to take the whole center. The drawback is that White doesn't develop the bishop, but the drawback for me is that I don't really get that fun of a game. And the whole point is I want to open things up. I'm sort of waiting for this to happen. I would really like for my opponent to take, but they are not doing that. Now there are a few ways to play this position. In general, in the Grunfeld defense, C5 and D5 almost always go together. And then the move C5 is just a very nice move because taking the... Okay, my opponent is just completely and utterly pretending I don't exist. But taking me will open up my diagonal in the long run. And I can always win the pawn back with my knight, or I can win it back with, you know, with my queen like this, and so on and so forth. But you're going to get games like this where the opponent wants nothing really to do with you. And so you have to think like, what do I do now? Now, if I take, I do open up my opponent's piece. So maybe I don't really want to do that. But if I take and then pawn takes, and then, you know, we have this big trade, I just develop, probably I'm all right. In general, I would urge you early on, like, not to overthink and try to play the simple and straightforward moves. And so with that in mind, I'm still a little bit frozen because I have so many options. And I'm trying to think in which direction to take the game. If I play bishop g4, my opponent will go h3, and then if I take, do I really want to give away a bishop so early in the game? Maybe not. So let's take the pawn there. And okay, wow, all that thinking, and my opponent just automatically takes back with the knight, which I don't think is a very good move. If you can put two pawns in the center, in general, this is going to be good. Of course, I could have developed my knight, I could have developed the bishop, but in general, something like this is nice because then you can push forward and gain a little bit of space. So if the opponent plays knight e2, e4 looks nice, and then when the bishop moves, I could take this pawn, but then I would be losing defense of this pawn. d4 is another option. So d4, I at least push my pawn into my opponent's position like this, and then I will defend the pawn, and then it becomes a passed pawn. A passed pawn is a pawn that can walk to the other side of the board without a pawn interrupting its path, and there is no pawn to interrupt my path. There are pieces blockading my pawn, absolutely, but nothing can block the path. So knight to e4, okay, interesting. Now, what do you do in a case like this? Do you take? Do you ignore? What should you do? I'm looking at this. I actually don't think taking is particularly bad. My opponent would obviously put the bishop there, but I will continue to develop. And then if they take this, well, then I get the bishop pair, which is nice. The bishop pair is generally a nice thing. Okay, interesting. That's a poor trade. And I think the difference between a 1400 and an 1800 is that an 1800 would have never played that. Maybe people watching this are like, oh, 1800, no, would have played that. Now, don't follow it up with b3 trying to go here and blunder d3 attacking the knight and your rook. That would be a very catastrophic way to end this. Bishop d2 is very passive. It kind of blocks everything in the position. Now, how do we use the bishop pair in a game of chess? Well, we can develop and attack the pawn. We can also go to this diagonal, but white is probably going to go b3. And maybe the idea of this was that if I push, there is this move blocking the diagonal effectively. I like rook e8. I also like pawn to c5. I think defending a pawn with a pawn is a very sophisticated approach. This pawn is weak, but I will protect it. And the other benefit of doing this is now I have this, and this could really be a long-term problem for white. I didn't go d3 because the knight would just come there, and I didn't see a particular follow-up. But if the bishop had not been there, this pawn push would not have worked. It wouldn't have done anything too useful. Clearly, we see that at 1450, the mistakes in the first 15 moves are literal, like, positional inaccuracies. Black is better. If I had to evaluate this position, it would be probably -1, because I have long-range sniper pieces, and I have a protected pass pawn, which not only sets up tactical possibilities, but also in every endgame, I will be putting a lot of pressure on my opponents. I would argue it's probably something like a -1. Knight to g3. When I see a knight move like this, I have a couple of choices. First, I want to play f5, set up a thorn, and not let the knight really go anywhere. I also want to maybe go threaten checkmate, because that's always nice. I think f5 should be a very reasonable move. Restricting a knight on an obscure square, normally the knight is on f3, but on g3, b3, you know, these squares. It's another very nice move by my opponent. I could offer a trade of rooks. I can also slide my queen up. I really don't know if queen d6 or queen d7 is better. Let's go here. And then I would like to put a rook on the open file. I don't want to put my queen there. I want my queen to be like on c6. And then this knight could be targeted by a side pawn. Okay, this is a very clear intention to play bishop to f4. I don't think the move bishop f4 itself scares me. I'm going to play rook e8. Now, bishop f4 would be a huge tactical mistake. But it's a very possible mistake because you don't want to take the rook. Now, this bishop is simply the queen is overloaded defending two pieces. And now you have to capitalize on tactical opportunities when they present themselves. And in this case, I would simply play rook takes rook. This would be a deflection. And honestly, at this level, people resign in positions like this. Like, they oftentimes will just tilt. But I expect queen e6 check. Now, you obviously run to the corner here. f8 is a little too crazy. If the knight could get to f7, I would be in a lot of trouble, but it can't. My opponent's probably going to play rook e1. And now I will show you converting winning positions. This game was chapter 3 of How to Win at Chess Next Level, which is piece play. And it's also chapter 7, converting winning positions. So, several options here. I really like pawn to d3 here. I noticed that there is this, but there's nothing there. I just take the queen. So d3. Might have just blundered queen to d7. Blunder is a harsh description of that move. No, I think I might have just made a really bad... Okay, it's not... I have a very... Oh my gosh. Queen is threatening this and this. But rook e8 is a huge... And like, that's why you always have to look for checks. I was going to go d2 here. Just pushing the pawn. But rook e8 check, maybe I have bishop f8. Can just block that and my rook guards. But I think I want to go bishop e4 and just not allow my opponent to do any of this to me. That might be the move. Although I am very unhappy with allowing this. Okay, we gotta lock in before we do anything too stupid again. And this blocks the rook entirely. Wow. And you see there's always counterplay. Always counterplay. If my opponent found all that on their own, I'm extremely impressed. And by on their own, I just mean, you know, they took vitamins. They chewed some brain supplements or something. f3 is on the board. So my bishop is hanging. If I move my bishop, now there's going to be rook e8. So I was looking here at playing the move pawn to d2. So look, my bishop is under attack, but what's worth more than that is a rook. So very precise play here. So the rook is hanging. Now my opponent will move. And I think I have a very nice conversion here. I'm going to play bishop check. I can also play queen check. That's also a nice move, getting in with my queen, and then the pawn on the second rank always protects the promotion of a new thing. And if king h1, I also had bishop d4 check probably, but if king h1, queen e1 check, and this is nearly winning on the spot. Knight f1 is a very nice final defensive trick. If I take the rook, there are some positions where you know, I would be checkmated. Like if the queen could get here, but it can't, then this should just win for me. And now if king to g1, I can play bishop to d4 check, and then I will take the knight. And that is the effort it took to beat a 1450. And I mean, I slipped up at some point, you know, and I had to really lock it down for a moment. Now, we won that game. And it was a very fun little Grunfeld. Unfortunately, it was not a Grunfeld on an open board, and it sort of mirrors the experience of a chess player who's trying to learn a new opening. But I played a Grunfeld defense for the first time in the slow run, and c5 castles, and now, you know, the position is equal. Black has definitely equalized here. But then you have to play like pawn takes, and then pawn takes, I was just going to develop my knight and then my bishop. So this is how I was going to play this position. This is also completely fine, and then you can probably play like b6 and develop your bishop. The computer also likes queen here attacking this, and then bring your rook and bring your knight. You have a lot of different possibilities. Knight takes is generally bad. You don't want to allow the opponent to put two pawns in the center like this, and I immediately capitalized. And this transformation of the position, this right here, this is just better for black. Knight c6 apparently not the most accurate. I should have started with rook e8. Simple improving move, targeting the bishop. I didn't play rook e8 because I thought bishop d5 was possible. Okay, doesn't matter. The computer doesn't want to play knight c6. It thinks that improving the rook's positioning with an attack on the bishop is just a good move for black. It just likes the open file. I didn't like it because I thought I'm losing a defender of a pawn in front of my king. I thought I should keep my king safe. But the reason people are stuck at 1400 and they're not getting up to 2000 is they are bad at transforming positions. This is a major skill I've identified. I share a lot of updates in the slow run, and one of the updates I'll share with you is I'm going to start writing the final book, the trilogy book of the How to Win at Chess series, which gets you from book 2 to book 3, 2200, 1600 to 2200. And after studying hundreds of games at this level, people don't transform positions the right way. They trade at the wrong moment. They make the wrong structural decision. And you're going to see this is equal, and this is -1. You give away the bishop pair. You give away a very active piece for pieces that are not very active. And after you go here, my position is just very comfortable. So I put the bishop on the long diagonal. You go knight g3. The computer doesn't love f5. It thinks that I should immediately play queen d7 and put my rooks in the middle. It's -1.9. This move is, okay, it's -1.7. It's around the same. Now it wants d3 because d3 would attack the rook. And when the rook moves, the computer just wants to put the second bishop exactly where the pawn was and just mow down the king, which is really ruthless. That's really nice and very, yeah, it's very handsome position. Queen c1 and now rook e8. And it's so important. Like, look, right here, you know, I could have went f4 and then I'm attacking the knight, and then f3, and then if pawn takes, then bishop takes, and the king is open. This is exactly why you screw up in chess, because you calculate f4, attacking the knight, then f3, then you look at pawn takes, bishop takes, wow, that's really good, the king is open. But you just completely wishful thought the situation. f4, the opponent regains control in the middle of the board, and then if you play f3, the opponent takes your queen. So you can't do that, right? So then you got to be like, okay, well then what if I take? But this transformation is terrible. Now the position is back to equal. You need the bishop as a long-range piece. The problem is, if you then move your queen like here, and white just blocks the knight in the middle, this knight's just fantastic now. So you've allowed an outpost square borderline for a knight, chapter 3 of How to Win at Chess Next Level. Whereas pawn play, The pawn play, chapter 2 of How to Win a Chess Next Level. You are restricting your opponent's pieces like thorns. You are just not letting them pass. Barbed wire, if you will. That's how I want you to think about these pieces. Rook e8, bishop f4, and the queen is overloaded. We carved it up. Opponent still played very well. This was a scary moment. You know, my original intention was d2, but I got a little worried. If rook e8, take, I lose. It's mate. It's just mate. I freaking lose, which is mind-blowing. But bishop e4 is a nice move. And after bishop e4, we win smooth sailing. Let's go. Let's keep going. I thought that was quite fun. I have played a lot of different openings. I want to play a nice Vienna. Okay, e4, c5. There's a lot of different openings here. One of the most effective consistently is the b3 or c3 Sicilians. Let's see what my opponent plays against the a3 Sicilian. This is my original e4 course. Wow, a5. The idea of a3 is to play b4, and a5 is really funny because it's a huge overreaction. The other benefit of a3 and not playing b4 is that if I ever put my bishop here, I always have a backup plan. I can get out. And b5 is a massive weakness. Now I play like this. b5 is a huge weakness. Notice I didn't give a check. It's a completely reasonable move, but like there's no point in doing it right now. Although if I ever need to go there, I will. I also do feel like 1500 on chess.com is a little bit of ELO hell. It's a rating where, you know, a lot of people are really good, and getting out of this rating is extremely challenging. And so you should not feel frustrated if you are struggling to do that. Look, we have a lot of ways to play this. I'm going to play f4. So I'm going to put my e and f pawns forward so I can put my pieces behind them, and then they can lead the charge into my opponent's position to launch an attack. Now, against this type of a setup with the bishop in the middle, the best way to play is to ultimately play e6, d5. That really should be played trying to challenge the bishop. My opponent might play bishop g4, pinning my knight. If they do that, I'm going to immediately get rid of it. This is a little bit too Swiss cheesy, and already I think I'm winning. Because, of course, you can like see this pawn and you take or you castle, but sometimes you do just have to think, can I punish my opponent's opening? And this is the fried liver. Knight and the bishop going here, and suddenly my opponent's set up in a way where they cannot defend. You have to make coordinated pawn moves. When you put so many pawns on the dark squares, you lose all light square safety. And that light square safety is here. And I'm pointing directly at it. Like, to play g6 but not play bishop g7, like, you could have played bishop g7 here or here. To do this is insanity. This is insanity. This makes no sense. To play this move but not finish up your development. Yeah, and now you're going to probably have to go bishop e6 and lose at least a pawn. At least. Now then the question becomes with white, how do we convert a winning position? d5, wow. And what if I just like keep, even pawn takes, attacking the knight? Knight moves, take this pawn. That knight moves. I mean, I don't know. Knight takes. I want to keep the diagonal open. So I think just knight takes. Like now I'm up a pawn and I'm still attacking. So if knight takes, I play bishop takes and I target f7. I'm also threatening knight takes f6 check followed by taking on f7. And I'm also still closer to castling than my opponent is, which is a huge deal. It's a huge, huge deal. Yeah, but okay, I get it. I can take on f6, and I can take here, and I can probably just castle. Transformation of the position. I'm winning, so I'm going to take on f6. I don't know if I want to take on e6 with my bishop or my knight, but in general, the knight is better to give away for the bishop in a trade. And then black has to go here. And a lot of you now would be tempted to just knock the whole thing down. Right now, we can just like take a deep breath and just like castle the king. And the next move is just attacking the queen. I was cognizant of this check, but it wasn't really anything dangerous. I could have blocked. And again, by playing like this, black has killed all pawn mobility. So since black cannot really move any pawns, we're going to just start targeting this. We're going to go queen to g4. We're going to play pawn takes pawn, opening up our rook. We are weak on this diagonal, but the king is just going to walk to the right to h1 and probably be completely fine. Black could lose this position very quickly. For example, if black long castles here. Okay, so that's a very cool move. The idea is if pawn takes pawn, my opponent takes with the queen and then creates a battery directed this way. Now, it doesn't quite immediately win the game or anything like that, but it's giving me some pause. I don't love this. So I am looking, I mean, of course I can just block it. And I can also develop my, my bishop to f4. Or f5. If pawn takes, and then I can take, I have queen h5 check. Or I can just play queen g4, attack the pawn on e6 with both my queen and my bishop. And also, this knight move, jumping into d4, I can counter with pawn to c3 at some moment. Wow, I'm tired. It's been a long day. Okay, that's also reasonable. I can just trade the queens here and go up a pawn. That's probably good enough. I can also push. So just because that's there doesn't mean I need to just like rush in. I think a lot of people would just play queen takes and then take with the bishop and then probably take on e5 and try to win that position. I will show you why I'm not doing that. I think the move knight to d4 and opening up the position for my opponent is actually beneficial for black. Instead, I'm going to keep the position closed. You need to keep the position under control. Using this pin and using this pin, I am now putting a lot of pressure, and the only active square for my opponent is the knight that's coming to d4. By taking here, I would have opened up the bishop, I would have, or also opening up there, I would have opened up the rook, the bishop, they all would have been swarming like this, and that would have been very unpleasant for me. And it's about keeping control. I see this move, I'm aware of it, but at the moment it's only attacking a pawn. And if I just quite literally push it and attack the knight, there is no further damage to my position. Knight c2, I just slide the rook out of the way, and the knight will never leave my territory. I will win it virtually instantly. And black cannot move. Knight c2, I also can take the pawn with a check. And I also have bishop to g5 attacking the queen, and bishop h6 disturbing the balance over there. So, yeah, I guess I can just take on e6. I also can probably play bishop g5. I can just sort of ignore. Yeah, this is really brutal actually. Some of these moves are really, and again, you don't have to, like bishop g5 is a really nasty move. And it's all a result of just the pressure on the king. This bishop I've completely neutralized. It's just blocked. This knight is threatening the rook. Right, so against this, I was thinking I can play f6 or... Yeah, I mean, like look at how strong my pawn is. And by going f6, these two pieces open up. So if the queen goes here or here, I just win the queen outright. If the queen goes to c7, I can play like f7 check. And just straight in, like f7, king up, bishop. Like, look at this. The pawn is just the hero, an absolute hero. If rook takes, I take. Yeah, now I have bishop f6, which is just, maybe even, no, bishop h6 didn't work. So if king takes, queen takes, e6 is mate. If king here, queen here is mate. What an absolutely vicious attack. And queen e6 is just checkmate. What a game. I mean, I have to say, that sort of came out of nowhere. I was very happy with how that unfolded. I mean, obviously, it's very nice to win. But this just shows you how to attack a person in an e4 game where you develop the f-pawn ahead of the knight. This f-pawn went there. And these types of positions in e4 games with f4 happen in the Vienna. So the opening that I was trying to play, this opening, white gets f4. I really like these setups. Very good for intermediate improvement. And also in the Sicilian, you can play the Grand Prix attack. And against every other opening, virtually, like you could, in theory, play this against the Pirt's defense. You could, in theory, play this against Caro-Kann. But your center would get locked and, challenged much faster. And obviously, if they play the Scandinavian, you can't play that. But in this game, I was going for my a3 Sicilian, a very famous opening that I have taught millions of people at this point, the wing gambit. So something like this. and then you just get, you push the knight back and you get a huge center. I have won 85% of my games from this position against very strong grandmasters, and it's a great line. My opponent went here, though, and I just developed knight, bishop, my pawns like this. And here, like, e5 is going to take the game from equal to, like, +2. Yeah, and this is just immediately over. It's kind of nuts. I can just go knight g5, hit f7, and that is the end of the game. And here, okay, e takes d5 was better. It was better to take with the weakest pawn. So here's an example of principles. I could have taken with the weakest piece, right? And then it would have went like this, but I didn't like how open my king was here. So I took with the knight. Second best move is also okay. We made a nice transformation. I took like this instead of taking with the bishop. The computer prefers taking with the bishop, just castle. And now, yes, I should have went f5 straight away. I went here. And again, if I had taken, suddenly, like, you're opening up the position for your opponent, even though you're creating fair trade situations, it's not the best. Here's another very good example. I could trade the queens, but if I trade the queens, suddenly knight to d4 is coming. But I have another problem, which is pawn takes pawn is coming. So now I want to play pawn takes pawn. Look at this position. I am currently up right here 3 pawns. Technically, this pawn's going to get taken, so it's not 3 pawns. But this is barely +1 for me because black is going to go here. And if I were to, like, trade some pieces and play like this is as good as I'm going to get. I'm up 2 pawns, but it does not feel that way. My pieces are not really playing. And guess what? There is still this incredible move, threatening the bishop, threatening knight e2 check and rook f1 checkmate. And if I take king h1, rook f1 is mate. Insanity. And so that is all to say, I played f5, less for attack and more for defense. I didn't want to open the position for my opponent's pieces. Luckily for me, it still resulted in a vicious and brutal execution of the black king. I mean, just ruthless entering with the pawn, the bishop, the rook, the queen all participating. Yeah, that was cool. That was nice. I want to get one more okay, maybe we'll get a Vienna to end our show today as we climb to 1500. So I just mentioned this opening, right? Bishop c3, okay. Queen g5. Wow, I have not faced this move in a while. Now, queen g5 here, I think, loses. So this can be actually countered. And at this level, I will show you how. This is not a threat. I just have knight to f3. Now, they will go here and attack my rook, but this is not hanging. That's very important. And then I will go rook to g1. So I'm going to activate another piece while my opponent is playing queen g3, right? And trying to queen h3 and trying to, escape with the queen. And then when the queen is there and the king is there, I have bishop takes f7 check. So I am ready with a vicious counter-attacking move onto my opponent immediately. Like, I'm not going to give them any opportunities to regroup. I am just going to instantly punish them for playing like this against me. And I'm also going to drink some water. Now, my opponent's deep in thought. Maybe because they know that this is a bad move now. Maybe they're kind of like trying to work it out and deciding if they should, go into it or something. Maybe they just check my account, and they wanna chat with me. My opponent, yeah, they called me a cheater. I get it. I understand. There's actually there are rating hells on chess.com where there is a lot of cheating going on. This account is very publicly not a smurf. And I say this every episode, basically, but anybody that I beat is getting their rating points back. Anyway, maybe I'll respond. I said, no, I'm not. Please play, smiley face. But I have chat disabled on the account. Anyway. This would be a slightly sad, although kind of funny note to end on. I would be very disappointed if we didn't actually get a game from this. I don't want to just sit there debating with people. But it is what it is. It is what it is. I've only been called in for chats at the 1400 level. So this is very fascinating. Anyway. Oh, my opponent has reconsidered. That's very nice. Maybe they'll start cheating. That would actually be really sick if they thought I was a cheater and they started cheating. But it's okay. It'll be a good YouTube title, losing to a person that cheats. Okay. Look, they didn't. I forgot my train of thought, and I'm quite tired. So, lost my train of thought. I've castled. And I didn't want to give this away anymore. And next, I would like to go knight to d5. Yeah. Oh, now my opponent's happy. I've just told them who I am. All right, all's well that ends well, boys and girls. Amazing. Anyway, I was going to say at the 1400 level is the only time I have been accused of cheating. Like, consistently. Or, like, people call me into the chat room, which is really funny. Anyway, look, here's the position. Here's a queen targeting a king. A lot of you would freak out. You'd panic. You know, you got to defend yourself. Actually, when your opponent plays unprincipled chess, you can already begin the punishment. The knight is just going to attack the pawn on c7, and it's not particularly simple to defend it. I could have also maybe went to d5, but I wanted to keep the knight central. Now, bishop h3 would be a cool counter. That would be a pretty cool move. And that would be a checkmate threat. If I were to push my pawn, I would lose my rook. But by, you know, king d8 is also reasonable. You could have played that. You could have played the move that I was just describing. Now we will play d3. So we want to defend our center pawn. And now the opponent's king is in the middle forever. I sort of predicted this move, right? You could play passive here with knight e1. You could also play passive with knight e3. Knight h4 is a cool move. Knight h4 counters the checkmate and attacks the queen. Queen g4 now would get out of that. And now we would just trade the queens. And now I will show you how to play an interesting, you know, a middle game. Just a middle game with relatively balanced pieces. No queens, so probably no checkmates anytime soon. And we're going to focus on piece play and pawn play. And we will begin. Let's see. How do we begin? We will begin with this knight. I see knight to d4 as a remote possibility. I also see knight to a5. If my opponent finds knight to a5, I will be really impressed. So for now, let's go back with our knight, which is not great, but we stopped knight d4. Wow, holy crap, that was played much faster than I would have liked. So they're going to take our bishop. Running away is not going to change anything. We have the option to slide back and let them do this, or make a move right now that develops a piece and does something more useful to the position. So let's maybe develop a piece, like to e3. I think there's probably nothing wrong with the move bishop e3, although I am getting a little lazy here. They don't have to take. I've sort of just decided mentally that they have to take this. Pawn to c6 is also possible. So that's annoying, and I'm no longer as satisfied with the position as I was. So we're going to play knight to e3. The idea of knight to e3 is that when they take this, I'm going to take with the pawn. We have lost our light squared bishop, which means now we need to rebuild our light squares. So we're going to play pawn to b3, number one. Then maybe we'll play pawn to f3 on the next move. My opponent's targeting this. So I think I will return the favor and go grab their bishop and then play this pawn to f3 and this pawn to b3. There we go. So that's what we're going to do right now. And next is this. Like this. So everything is rock solid. My opponent's playing very fast, which is not you know, that's never good. And I'm going to try to develop a bishop. I'm going to try to develop a rook. That's what I'm going to do. Okay. Let's develop a bishop. It's just you know, vaguely standing around. Let's bring a rook to the middle. There is a pin here. It's never too late. You can blunder a tactic. You can accidentally blunder a pawn just in the middle of the game. That's a nice move. That attacks my knight. I can just protect my knight. I can move my knight. I can walk my king to the middle, which is kind of a funny little sequence. Now, will my opponent go king e7? So this person called me a cheater, then realized who I was, got very happy to play me, and is now playing well. Until that move, they missed that in all of this mess, there is a pawn that can be taken. That's tough, because had they gone king e7, the position was very equal. Black was playing very, very well. Very well. Now that we've won a pawn, we have to begin, you know, the next phase of the game, which is probably the end game phase. So I'm going to trade bishops. I'm going to complement them. Now, the bad thing about taking with the rook, which looked very natural, is that you will now be punished along this pin a second time. Just simple rook positioning. I think I have a tactical opportunity to hit the rook and hit the pawn. It's actually kind of like mind-blowing how you can just hit on the same exact tactic 2 times. I do think also my opponent made some inaccuracies there because they played a little bit too fast, but it's, you know, it is what it is. I will now be up 2 pawns. Now I'm up 2 pawns in a rook and knight position. I would like to go support my rook. Right now is a very good moment. I can probably just protect. When your pieces are like this, you want to make sure there's no disconnection move. Sometimes a piece can get in the way of these 2 pieces. If rook d7 is played, I will just trade. Next move, we're going to try to improve our knight. In the endgame, we try to improve our pieces. We try to improve our pawns. We try to improve our king. King is obviously not something you want to improve in a queen endgame because the king is very weak in a queen endgame. In a rook endgame, oh, okay, my opponent just decided to throw in the towel. Honestly, if you know you're playing me, if you know you're playing a master, you might throw in the towel here. But like I said, up until that point, like Black had played really, really well. You know, they thought here for the first time in a while, and they just blundered a pawn. And then they kind of tried to fight back, but unfortunately it just didn't quite work. But here, you know, bringing the queen back and then playing like this was very decent. Knight d5 was one of the moves I could have played. I also could have attacked the center with d4, but it's just amazing that even bringing the queen out like this is not that bad. Like, defending like this against this opening is really not that bad. You have to know knight f3 takes, and then this counter with bishop f7. And if you don't know that with knight g5 fork, very easy to get yourself in a bad position. And here, instead of castling, I could have also went d4 and left it. But Black played very well. Wow, it's going to be tough to get to 1500. I mean, my opponents are playing very reasonable. Oh, wow. Here, knight g5. What? Why? Doesn't the bishop just go back? Oh, it's the f-pawn. The hero once again. Always. And then knight f4 hitting the queen. And the queen can't take this because then I would take with the bishop and then take the queen. Yes. That's nice. I'm tired, guys. I'm tired. I hope this was still a very fun episode. 1450s. I mean, this is no joke, man. I mean, this is some serious stuff. I guess we're going to raise that up to 125. And I will see you all for episode number 34 as we approach 1500. Get out of here.